It's draft week on Locked On Canadiens. We are going to break down 3 more targets for the Canadiens' 2 first-round picks, figure out which one we like most, and then we have to talk about Patrik Laine because it seems like there may be an extension in the works, and we'll get into that on today's episode of Locked On Canadiens.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into episode 1336 of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day, for subscribing wherever you get your podcast. Doing that supports us here on the show and ensures you do not miss an episode. We hope you're staying cool this week on the East Coast. We are going to get hammered with a heat wave, so stay cool, stay inside, listen to us on Locked On Canadiens. We'll be here all week as we're getting ready for the NHL draft. I can't believe we're already there. The condensed NHL schedule, we go from the Stanley Cup final to the draft in the blink of an eye. So this is going to be a fun week. We'll be talking about some prospects, some guys that we might see wearing Canadiens jerseys by the end of the week. Laura, how are we feeling this week?
It's an exciting week. Honestly, I always look forward to draft week, but it's been really weird this time around because since the Canadiens went into full rebuild mode, we've been so focused on the draft and we've been hanging on the draft as if it's everything. And it's so funny how in the course of just one season, now we're hanging on to every possibility for the Canadiens to get a guy, whether it's via trade or free agency, to sort of push them to the next level. But it's still an exciting time because they're not out of the rebuild just yet. And one of the things that's most important, I think, is for a lot of teams, like they'll pull out all the stops in order to try to win now. But then you look at their prospect cupboard and it'll be empty, right? So they'll have to go through many years of being bad or mediocre after they contend, right? Whereas with Montreal, I think that they have the opportunity now to kind of build a lineup where as people leave, like let's say they are in a contending situation, as people leave, they'll be able to replenish with talent. And I think that's really, really important. So I feel like this draft, along with the next draft, are going to be just as important as the last two.
Yeah, we're going to jump into the draft, and I want to hit on that first point you made about how the mentality around the draft for the Canadiens, at least as Canadiens fans and people who follow the team, has changed. But we'll touch on that. We have a Patrik Laine rumor to talk about. A potential extension might be in the works after the draft. We'll talk about the merits of that and how we feel about that kind of paperwork getting done potentially in the middle of the summer. And then it's our Jayden Struble season review day. A very interesting player in an interesting spot on the Montreal Canadiens. We'll talk about his season that was in 24-25 and what we expect to see from him moving forward. But let's start with the draft. I want to touch on that, the point that you made, how in the past we've sort of been hanging on those draft picks, right? And I think those picks had so much pressure on them. The 1 and the 2 5s had massive pressure on them. And the Canadiens front office, while they certainly didn't buckle to the fan pressure and make the picks that Montreal fans wanted them to make, probably for the best, if we're being honest, I think they're going to feel a little bit less pressure going into these 2 picks, especially in the first round. And instead of these guys being forced to, you have to be a cornerstone of this franchise, the pressure on those players is going to be much lower, should they develop and become Montreal Canadiens later on. But let's start with some. We have 3 targets here that I've been sort of taking in all of the draft content that I can to try to aggregate them and create my own sort of thoughts on what's happening. Corey Pronman at The Athletic. He always does great work for the draft. I know House fans are always on him about his Lane Hutson take, and I don't know why his Lane Hutson take is the reason Lane Hutson wasn't a first-round draft pick. Like, if everybody believed what Corey Pronman did, like, that's how he gets to 60 whatever overall. So I think we all get to chill on that a little bit. Anyway, he has the Canadiens taking 2 players in that first round. And I listened to the Hockey PDOcast with Dmitry Filipovich. He had on Chris Peters and Cam Robinson, who are prospect experts as well, and they have the Canadiens taking another player at 16. So there's 3 players. Let's start with the guy that Corey Pronman has them taking. In Carter Bear of Everett of the WHL, Elite Prospects has him as the 8th ranked player in this year's draft. Left wing, 6 foot, 179. The comparisons they gave him were Seth Jarvis and Brandon Hagel. Now, the reason that Bear has been sliding in the draft was due to an injury. In March, he had a lacerated Achilles, which, if you remember, that happened to Peyton Krebs at the draft years ago. And he fell pretty far in the draft. And on draft day, I remember he was on the little scooter going up to the front because he couldn't he couldn't use that leg. The good news is that seems to be a partial laceration for for Carter Bear. So he's already back skating. It doesn't seem like it'll be a massive hindrance for him moving forward. Elite Prospect says he's got the best motor in the draft. The line that they gave him was got that bear in him. They've had the got that dog in him, but for bear they changed it to got that bear in him. This is why you need to pay for the Elite Prospects draft guide. The way that these guys care about what they do is unrivaled. I really cannot stress enough how valuable that tool is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's something about Carter Bear that seems very Canadiens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
There's definitely, I don't know what it is, but like every description that I read of him, like it feels like that's the kind of guy they would go for.
Yeah, and I mean he's not massive. Like I said, 6 foot 179. He'll probably get another inch or two and put on a couple more pounds by the time he's NHL ready. But yeah, I think the best motor in the draft line that Elite Prospects gave him. I think that's if you're looking for compete, that's it, right? Like that's the kind of guy that fits that mold. Does the injury concern you? Because it seems to be the reason he has slid in draft coverage. Like he might not even be in Montreal's range if not for that injury. Does the injury concern you at all?
Honestly, no, but I'm not one of those people that's the most well versed on injuries like that, right? We definitely have a couple of doctors that listen to this show, so please let us know what you think. But personally, in my mind, I feel like if the injury is the only reason that he's sliding, it might be because the people who are drafting at that level want someone right away, right?
Right.
And so if this guy's going to have to rehab and like get back to it, the team that takes him has to be a team that has time for him to develop. That can wait.
Yeah. I mean, look, Matthew Schaefer, who's going to go first overall, I think played 17 games this year because he was out for most of it as well. Roger McQueen is a big injury question mark because he's got back problems. And, we're a year removed from the Blue Jackets selecting Caden Lindstrom, who didn't even play this year due to back problems. So, there are legitimate reasons to be concerned about injury, but it remains to be seen if that's the case for Carter Bear. Let's move on. Another forward here in Lynden Lakovic of Moose Jaw of the WHL. Elite Prospects has him as the 14th ranked forward, or 14th ranked skater, rather. He can play both wings. He is 6'4¼ 190 pounds, shades of Quinton Byfield and Dylan Cousins. Elite Prospects, what I took away from their review of him was his ability to evolve his game. He was very much a rush shot first and only sort of player, and he's rounded his game out to just be a better play driver overall. The big knock on him is that even though he has that massive frame, he doesn't use it. He's not an overly physical player. He has a hard time on the walls. He remains on the perimeter for most plays. Just speaking about that skill set in general, how confident are you that the Canadiens would be able to develop that aspect of his game? Because they're trying to get Slafkovsky to do that, and it's been mixed returns, right? I don't know that you can instill that want to in guys like this.
No, I don't think so. And part of that is we've seen other players that have that same criticism of them, and very few of them actually do develop into that kind of guy, right? Like they've got to have it in them from the beginning. And I think they can try, but like you said, it could yield mixed results. And then Slafkovsky actually showed some shades of it in previous play before they drafted him, right? So they definitely saw something that they could mold in that one.
Yeah, no, I think that's a project player. If you're picking that guy, you're admitting that it's going to take you a while. All right, the last one we have here, and this is the player that the Hockey PDO cast took in their mock draft. They did 16 picks, and they stopped on Montreal's first pick. That is Justin Carbonneau of Blainville-Boisbriand of the QMJHL. Elite Prospects has him ranked as the 11th best forward, or skater. Right wing, 6'1", 191, shades of Philip Forsberg. This is a toolsy player.
Yeah.
Hands. The one thing I noticed in my very limited viewings of him is everything he does in the offensive zone is in service of getting the puck to the net. Yeah. Whether it is passing it to an open player, shooting the puck himself, or making a power move or a finesse move to get to the front of the net, he wants to be as close to the goalie as possible or get his teammates in a position to be in that spot. I think that's going to make him a very effective player. I know we all want to go, oh, the Canadiens took one of the best, players out of the queue. And I think that's a cool story. I kind of just really like this player. Like everything I learn about this guy, I'm like, yeah, this would really be cool next to Ivan Demidov on that second line.
Absolutely. And I think that's the big thing is that I always wonder why he would be available where the Montreal Canadiens are picking. Like, that's my biggest thing is if he is as advertised, then why is he not a top 10 player? And I know some rankings have him up there, but he's definitely the person whose name first came up. He's definitely somebody who even our listeners like have on their radar. And I know part of it is because he's in the queue, but I definitely feel like if he's available, he's very much somebody the Canadiens could pick.
Yeah, and I think the reason why he's not that top player is because in service of him going to the net and making those moves and making those passes, he kind of overdoes it at times and he turns the puck over. It's decision making that needs to be worked on. And to me, that rings true about Lane Hutson. Not that he turned the puck over a lot when he first got to Montreal, but he thought he needed to beat guys one-on-one all of the time, and you don't. Like, you need to pick your spots and be able to know when you have the space. That's something that I think the Canadiens could teach a player to do. So that's why, like, the holes in his game or the parts of his games that he needs to improve, I think you can fix him pretty easily. So that's a player I really love. Look, if there's guys that we haven't talked about, throw them down in the chat. We'll cover them this week. It's draft week here on Locked On Canadiens for the rest of the week because first round is on Friday. We better be ready. All right, we'll leave the draft coverage there for now, and we come back. It's Rumor Roundup. We have Patrik Laine potentially being interested, or the Canadiens potentially being interested in signing an extension in Montreal. And we'll get to that in just a minute. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no-shells variety, whether I'm snacking at my desk or I'm on a road trip, or I'm just on the go, and I need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to. I especially like the no-shells variety and the sea salt and vinegar or chili roasted versions. And if you love cracking into every open shell for that satisfying crunch, don't worry, we haven't forgotten about you. The in-shell options are always a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, Laura, we are back. I have to lean over and get my new hat on because it is Rumor Roundup time. We are, I didn't think we were going to get a Patrik Laine rumor in the middle of the summer here. We're not even at the draft yet. We're talking about Patty again. This is by way of the fourth period. Dave Pagnotta, in an article just sort of talking about trade talk heating up as the draft nears. He left us this nugget on the Canadiens. The Montreal Canadiens continue to be active. They are looking for roster upgrades, which includes finding a number 2 center, and then in parentheses adds like half the league. So you can see sort of where the Canadiens are there. And GM Kent Hughes is trying to turn over as many stones as he can. Also, the team has not yet spoken with Patrik Laine's camp about an extension. He's entering the final year of his contract, but that is expected at some point after the NHL draft. Are you shocked by this? Because I think I kind of was.
I am shocked by this completely. I did shake my head, but I meant, I just like, this whole time we've been talking about, we don't think he's going to be back after next year, right? We even think he might even be traded at the deadline, depending on how the Canadiens do.
Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting that this is something that they feel works, right? I personally am not opposed to the idea of Patrik Laine in Montreal. I just think that the money is too much right now.
Yeah, I'm glad you started because I have to kind of recuse myself from initial statements on this because it'll just be the Patty Laine hour, and we only are a half-hour show, so we definitely can't do that. I love the dude. I love the player. I love the guy. I'm very excited to see that this might be a possibility. I do want to touch on really quick because I think part of the reason we have this bit, right, is to point out some of the absurdity in insidership and talking about, trades getting talked about by insiders and things like that. I know a lot of people when it comes to, this particular publication, the fourth period, and Dave Pagnotta as an insider, they kind of write off a lot of the things that he says. And which is, you're right. You can do your information literacy is your own to manage. I don't have any issues with that. What I do find personally is, why would someone make this up? First of all, it wasn't in the thumbnail. It wasn't in the headline. There's no he's just using Montreal for clout. Montreal, we were buried. This point was buried in the article. So this whole he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just making it up for clicks. You would have already had to have clicked on the article in order to know about it. to the point of Laine, though, I think your point about the cap hit is the point. It is the point to be made here. At 8.5, which is what he currently is at, it's too much. It's too much for the player. It's too much for what he provides at this point in his career. But if he really wants to stay in Montreal and the Canadiens want to keep him, and he's amicable to making a deal, if you can get him at like what, I think I'd be comfortable around 6 million, maybe a little less, 5.5 million for 4 or 5 years, and you get a 35 goal scorer and a 65 point scorer.
Yeah.
I don't really see the problem. No.
I think the thing with Patrik Laine though is that isn't he going to want more? Because I'm okay up until 6.5 for what Patrik Laine brings.
Sure, I think that's fine.
Yeah, but he makes way more than that.
Mm-hmm.
So is he going to accept that? And then the next question is he going to get that on the open market?
That's a great question too. I don't know what this last little while has done to his sort of value across the league. Because, Kent Hughes came out in his postseason press conference and said, we don't make the playoffs without Patrik Laine, to which I say is an objective truth, right? Like, he came back and saved their power play. And I know people got frustrated with how that power play then refused to evolve when he got hurt. But I think that's so Kent Hughes, he understands the value this player has to his team. I don't know what Patrik Laine would get on the open market. I think if Patrik Laine were to go into this next season without a contract and he put together a 40-goal, 80-point season, maybe you're going into the open market and you're looking at like, I don't know, 7-8 million again, maybe more than that, which is why, like, if you're the Canadiens and you can get him locked to a number that makes sense, even if he's not playing to that level, you do it. And, to your point, what if Patty doesn't want to take that? What if he wants more? He might. And in that case, you say, thanks for your services. We won't be able to do that. I think the Canadiens only do this if it makes sense for their long-term vision here. And I think the fact that this conversation is happening, I think means it points out how much Laine likes it in Montreal.
Yeah. The situation is good.
Yeah, and I think a player that's gone through what he's gone through, maybe that's what matters more than anything. That yes, the money's going to matter. He needs to make sure that his family is set up forever. And that's what these athletes are doing. I know we like to poke fun at how, they're making millions. Who cares what they think? Like, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to set up their families for generations, right? It's important to put that into context. So Laine is going to want to do that, but he's also going to need to figure out where he wants to play and where he wants to live. And I'm hoping that it's in Montreal at a decent number. And it seems like that might be what happens. All right, let's do Yeehaws on this because there's one more thing that we wanted to kind of quickly, poke fun at before we head out of Rumor Roundup. So Yeehaws, realism and entertainment. How are you feeling about this one?
Realism is 5. It makes sense. Right?
Yeah, as I was reading this, I felt like it was very low. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, if he scores like 35 goals, yeah, of course you want that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And then entertainment wise, I think it's a solid 4.
Yeah, it's a million for me because I just love this guy. All right, in that same article from Dave Pagnotta, he talks about the Toronto Maple Leafs. On Friday, we weren't sure whether contract talks between the Maple Leafs and John Tavares were close or far. We are told they are in the process of negotiating. Well, earlier today, we were told the two sides aren't close at all. While we are still 10 days away from July 1st, leaving plenty of time to iron out a new deal, it sounds like the Leafs have pitched a 3-year deal worth less than $4 million per season for John Tavares. That won't get it done. Let's see how this progresses. What are the Leafs doing? That doesn't seem like, I understand he's an aging player and, they want to delegitimize or de-emphasize the core of this team a little bit. That would be, if I was John Tavares, I'd be insulted by that offer. No,
that's the Leafs telling them they don't want him. Honestly,
yeah.
That's the Leafs saying thank you, but no thank you.
Yeah, no kidding. Hey, any interest in him in Montreal as the second line center? It seems like the Leafs aren't paying him like one because they don't think he can be one.
Listen, I said no because I don't trust his age. I think he's just on the downswing, and I got yelled at a lot because he had a good season last year. I still don't trust it. Sometimes he skates like he's skating in mud. That's not the recipe for success on this team.
Yeah, I mean, Marner had 100 points last year, and I don't think anybody cares. You know, like I just don't think that their regular season numbers matter in the grand scheme of things. They just don't. I just don't think it matters there. How fun is that rumor for you? How many entertainment yeehaws do you give for the Maple Leafs fumbling this bag?
Like 100 out of 5.
Yeah, yeah, enough yeehaws that it burns as bright as the sun. Like I think it's super funny watching this team just not really know what it is.
Yeah.
It is the best case scenario for any team in the Atlantic going, that's one more team we don't have to contend with. We don't have to worry about winning a Stanley Cup. Like, this is the sort of behavior that teams like that do. All right. We'll leave the Maple Leafs and Tavares there. I can't believe we got to that. And when we come back, we're going to touch on the season review for Jayden Struble, figure out what his role on this team is moving forward. And we'll get into that in just a minute here on Locked On Canadiens. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. When I'm betting on hockey, I love the anytime goal scorer option. The player props are always super fun. So player home run props in the Major League Baseball, it's a fun alternative during the hockey season. I'll be taking some of that action this summer. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, we are back. Third period here at Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day, and for subscribing, especially on YouTube. And while we're mentioning that, we have a subscriber contest going on YouTube to try to get us to some milestones. Once we hit 4,500 subscribers on YouTube, we will be giving away this signed photo of Josh Anderson, that lovely Stanley Cup final patch on his sweater. Once we hit 5,000 subscribers, this Arbor Jacques signed photo is going out the door as well. To enter, just put contest entry down in the chat. Make sure you're subscribed as well. We will ask for that verification when we pick the winner. And when we hit those milestones, we'll do the drawings. Putting contest entry enters you for both, so you don't need to enter more than once. And good luck, and thank you for supporting us here at Locked On Canadiens. All right, let's do our Jayden Struble season review. We always start with a word to give us sort of a flavor of what we thought of this season for this player. When I say Jayden Struble's 24-25 campaign, Laura, what is the word that comes to mind for you?
Muscle.
Incredible word. I don't even know that necessarily needs explanation, but I want you to expound on that a little bit. What about that?
I think the thing about Jayden Struble is that the reason he's so effective is just because he's so immovable. Like, he is so physically gifted. I remember during the playoffs, my friend was like talking about him, and they're like, "What does this guy do?" And I was like, "His job is strong." Like,
yeah.
he's so good at just like getting in your way and not getting out of it, right? I like, he is a shutdown defenseman, right? He's not like offensively creative or anything like that. He does what needs to be done to keep you away from the goalie and to keep the puck away from the net, right? I think the biggest thing with Jayden Struble, I will say over the course of this season and also last year, I realized, is that a lot of his strength comes from the strength of his line mate, right?
Yeah.
It depends who you pair him with. And it turns out really well in some respects, and it turns out not so great in other respects. And I think the key often is not just a skill level, but also a maturity and experience level of his line mate.
Yeah. And look, I have some data on that because I think you're bang on about Jayden Struble is as good as his line mate is. My word is wanting, because I left the season wanting more from this player. Going into coming out of the Four Nations break, if you're a regular listener of the show, you may remember coming out of the break, I said I wanted to see Jayden Struble and Lane Hutson on a pair, because in the brief viewings that we had gotten from them over the course of the season, that pair ruled. It was very good. It was very effective. And, it turns out that was the fourth most used pairing for the Montreal Canadiens in the regular season this year, 322 minutes. And it was their best in expected goals percentage at 60.7%. The others are like Xhekaj Savard was the most used pair because it was just the most consistent pair. That was the third pair forever. That was a 45% expected goals. Matheson and Hutson, 49%. Matheson and Carrier, 42%. Goulet Carrier, 50.6. Goulet Hutson, 48.1. So those were like the main pairs that we saw, as well as Matheson Goulet and Hutson Savard for whatever portion of the beginning of the season where we had Hutson and Savard. That Hutson Struble pair was Hutson was Struble's most common pair. He was his most common defensive partner. And, I know at the time there were a lot of questions of, well, is this Struble making this work? Is it the pair working really well together, or is it Hutson pulling that pair along? You can make the argument for the latter, right? That Lane Hutson just could make any defenseman look really great next to him.
Was he the most common line mate for everybody this season?
Hutson, he might have been, just because he never left the ice, right? The dude played 30 minutes a night.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me. Like, he's in the top 6 pairings, he's on 3 of them. So it kind of makes sense to think of it that way. What do you make of that pair being successful? Like, was that more Hutson's doing, or was that Struble and Hutson having a complementary game?
I think it's the latter. I'll be honest. Yes, Hutson is the main factor. Like, let's not deny that part, right? But I feel like somebody like Struble, when there is a Hutson there, Hutson feels free to do his own thing, knowing that Jayden Struble is gonna cover the defensive coverage, right? And vice versa, right? Like, Lane Hutson's not asking Struble to do too many things to make up for his own shortcomings, so he's free to do his own game, right? And I think that's the key part, is nobody's trying to be what they're not when you put that pairing together. And a lot of times, and with the Canadiens this season, that's what we saw, is like, when you tried to pigeonhole somebody into something that they weren't, it was not working. When you leaned into who they really are, it did work, right? Like, we saw it with everybody. Armia did not do too much and had an amazing year. Jake Evans had an amazing year because he was literally like with the line mates of his dreams, right? Brendan Gallagher, right? He stopped trying to be who he was 10 years ago, and he tried to be who he is now. The same thing with Christian Dvorak in the second half of the season. The same thing with Josh Anderson since the beginning of the season, right? Like, everybody just did what they were meant to do, and not more or less. And it really worked out for them. So I think that's really like the key to the Hutson and Struble pairing.
I think you're bang on. And I think, if you were to, the description that you gave of that Hutson Struble pairing, right? If you were to not give us the name of, if you told us Hutson, but you didn't give us the name of his partner, isn't that kind of what we're theorizing a Hutson Reinbacher pairing to look like? Right? Exactly. Like, isn't this kind of training for that kind of pair? They're on opposite sides because Hutson was playing the right side for a lot of the year. But to me, like, that's how we've compartmentalized that idea, is you need big stay-at-home guy who can also skate and do some really positive things with the puck to allow Hutson to be the most amplified version of himself. I think that's bang on. And I also, we've talked about, Struble might have to be a casualty of just the roster game, the numbers game, which I find is a shame, because I think that a player of that build is so much what the Canadiens are trying to be, right? He's, like you said, his job is strong. His job is muscle. His job is, I'm bigger than you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. Try to move him, right? Like, try to hit him.
Exactly.
You bounce off. Like,
exactly.
Right? I love Jayden Struble. I don't want to see him go.
No, absolutely. And I think, everyone gives Arber Xhekaj his flowers for his physical play. Jayden Struble lays guys out a lot. I think a lot more than Arber Xhekaj. Arber Xhekaj is strong and rude to you in front of the net, but Jayden Struble will hit you in open ice, and I think that hurts more.
Yeah.
I really want to see them, if they decide that he's going to be on this team next year, which I think and I hope that he is. I want to see them allow him to be that guy a little bit more. And I want to see them sort of take the training wheels off and say, all right, just go be strong. Go be big, strong Jayden Struble. And I think we will see a version of that player that we could have only hoped for. Mm-hmm. I think this player has more than what we've seen so far. It's really difficult to make any kind of room for yourself on the Canadiens back end right now, especially if you shoot left-handed. Like, it's just the struggle that it is on that right side, or left side rather. All right, let's hit our trivia and then head out of here for the day, huh? Last week, Gabriel Dumont retired, one-time Montreal Canadien and longtime Syracuse Crunch captain. He announced his retirement on Thursday. He played 90 NHL games, scoring 4 goals and adding 5 assists. He only scored 1 goal as a member of the Montreal Canadiens on April 17th, 2013 in Pittsburgh in a 6-4 loss to the Penguins. Which former Montreal Canadian scored a goal for Pittsburgh in that game? Do you remember the answer to this one, Laura?
Yes, like I could forget. It is one Douglas Murray. Fun fact, I believe that was his only goal as a Pittsburgh Penguin.
It was his only goal as a Pittsburgh Penguin, and it was scored against the Montreal Canadiens. And then Marc Bergevin said, you know what? We have to go get that guy. And that's what he did. He was a Montreal Canadien the following season. The answer was given to us correctly by Super Rain Curtis Martin, who Curtis Martin correctly pointed out that he wasn't a Hab until the season afterwards. But yes, the point of the question still stands. HJ Cuneo and Jeff Harple all got the question correct on this one. Anytime I can mention Douglas Murray, I'm going to do it. I think it's just, that's a guy. That's just a guy, right? We love that guy for being a guy. All right. Today's question in honor of Jayden Struble's player review. Jayden Struble was not a one-sport athlete. In 2014, he represented his home of Cumberland, Rhode Island in this tournament. Name the tournament that Jayden Struble represented his home of Cumberland, Rhode Island in 2014. Put it in the comments down below. Let us know how smart you are, and we'll give you a shout out on the next episode of Locked On Canadiens. But that's all we have for today's episode. Thanks so much for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day, first listen of the week here. It's draft week on Locked On Canadiens. We'll be covering the NHL Entry Draft headed into Friday, so make sure you're tuning in and send us your questions on the draft. We'll do our best to answer them and reach out to some experts along the way. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast. There is no offseason. They're bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter most with local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're also available on Amazon Fire TV on your free Fire TV channels app. Click the Montreal Canadiens logo in the hockey section, and you can watch all of our episodes there as well. We are Locked On Canadiens everywhere we are posting things. Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok. Give us a follow on all those platforms. You can email us, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Most of our mailbag questions go in through there. Send them our way. We do our mailbag every Friday. We might have a special guest this week on our mailbag, so you might want to send in some questions for a guy who used to be in the square that I am in. Anyway, you can find me at Maybe It's Ian. You can find Laura at The Active Stick. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys tomorrow.